Okay, so let me ask you a question. What exactly are we doing here? I mean, what exactly, when we step into entrepreneurship, what exactly are our thoughts or is our plan or what are we really wanting? I don't know how long you've been in business, but as somebody who has been an entrepreneur for 12 years, when I reflect back, I don't think that I even knew the answer to that question. I knew what I didn't want, right? And funny thing about that is a lot of times when I'm talking about goals with clients, I will even tell them that. Let's start with what you know you don't want, because goals are interesting because we think that we know what we want, right? We think that once we achieve X result, that will create X result for our life. But we actually don't have that data yet because we haven't felt it or experienced it or been in it yet. But we do know what we have experienced. We do know what we don't want. And so in your journey of entrepreneurship, in your journey of becoming a mom entrepreneur, whether you're an entrepreneur before kids or became an entrepreneur after having kids, I think it's important to think about this and recognize, even using the experience that you've had, no matter how many years in you are, what do you not want? And using that to define what you do want. And what I can tell you that I know is that you probably don't want to spend the rest of your life buried in your business. What you probably do want is freedom, is the ability to choose what you work on, who you work with, how you work, and when you work. And it sounds like such a simple concept, but the issue is in the evolution of entrepreneurship, where we start cannot be how we finish. We have to evolve, we have to change. And that evolution, that change comes with a level of discomfort that some people are not willing to face, or is so unexpected that it makes people feel like they're doing something wrong. And so today, I really want to talk about this idea of being a manager or a glorified employee of your business versus being the CEO. Like, what exactly is the difference, and why are we stuck being employees in our own business? And what do we need to change to be CEOs? And why do we actually need to be CEOs? And so the simple version of it is this. When we start, usually as solopreneurs, it is us. We are the entire team. We are the salesmen, we are the marketers, we are the content creators, we are the content producers, we are the admin, we are the operations, we are the HR, not to mention we are providing the service that we have. And then over time, you likely have brought some people on to fill these spaces. The issue is that we haven't developed the way we think so that we change the way that we operate that actually moves us into becoming the CEO. So when you start as an entrepreneur, I don't really think that like you're the actual CEO. I think that you're a bunch of different employees rolled up, including the CEO role. But what you need to do is you need to get really clear on, again, what you want by identifying what you know you don't want. And then also, what is your actual CEO role? Because many people, myself included, just do what we know we need to do to keep the business running, sustaining, and growing, to keep providing for our families. But we're not stopping to question if we are in the right role in our business, right? We're hiring, we're outsourcing, we're delegating, we're building a team, but are we actually changing our own role? Why are we bringing these people on? Why are we creating a team if that is not also shifting the role that we play in the business? And so this is a question that all of my clients we walk through, and I'm like, well, we're creating roles and responsibilities when we're refining your team structure here. What is your role? What are the clear lines of your responsibilities? What are you willing to do and not do? What are you still holding on to that needs to be delegated because you've always done it? And so much of this is truly in our minds because we're afraid to let go, because we're afraid of, putting too much on somebody else's plate. We feel guilty for delegating. It's like we have this need to stay in the victim mentality of like, I'm so buried in my business because I'm an entrepreneur and I'm a mom and all these things. And hell yes, it is hard. It is hard to balance all the things. And you will absolutely have moments where you feel like you're failing at all of it because you're a human. But at the end of the day, our life is our choice. And if we lose sight of that, if we lose sight that what we spend our time and our energy on is our choice, then we lose everything. And so if you are still operating with a solopreneur mindset and you have a team of people, you are not operating like a CEO. And the reason why this is so important to address is because this is the exact reason why people get stuck, why their potential gets capped, why they plateau, and why women feel like they are spinning on autopilot and on a hamster wheel and not getting where they want to go, right? So let's talk about the difference in a manager or a glorified employee of your business versus a CEO. So managers, this is how you can identify if you are doing more managing in your business than actually leading your business. Managers are more in the business. CEOs are more on the business. That's the simple version. So managers are spending more time in the work, right? So implementation of ideas, implementation of tasks, admin things, operational things. They are in it versus like reviewing it, giving, being the visionary and bringing ideas to the table and then having other people fill in the gaps of and implement these things. So when you are managing, you are micromanaging. So if you have a team in place, not always micromanaging, but there's a lot of micromanaging that is happening, and that prevents you from truly being in the CEO role. What this looks like is that you will lose sight of the bigger picture because you are so bogged down in tasks, in doing. And there is really no emphasis on who you are being, right? So there is this rise, this evolution that happens to where you move further away from not having your hands in the work, because I still think that there's a foundational need for you to be attached to your craft. But you see things from more of an overview, more of an observational standpoint. There is more space for creative thinking. And this is what drives innovation for the business. This is what drives growth for the business. What drives growth for the business is not continuing to stay in your email inbox, right? So micromanagers, or if you are managing your business, you are likely getting lost in all of these tasks, which is preventing you from seeing the bigger picture and seeing the long term. It looks like every task or process or procedure needs some sort of approval. And there's a fine line here, right? And this is heavily dependent on your industry. It depends on like the phase that you are with your employees, how long they've been around, how qualified they are, if they're still training, what you're handing off, etc. But if every single thing that runs through your business requires your direct review, then you either don't trust your people or don't have the right people in the right roles, or you just are so fearful of what will happen if you don't look at every little piece. So another way that this will show up is you have obsession with like constant updates of what's going on. This was totally me trying to over control and like being on Slack, like, where are we with this? What's going on? And it's like, let people work. Like, what I learned from that is that we actually just have to learn how to delegate better. I was being so like ambiguous and kind of just like throwing stuff at people without any sort of structure around it. And then, so it was my own fault, right? Whereas if I give the who, what, when, where, why, in those clear deadlines, those clear parameters, the clear results that I want and when, then I can just hand it off and be okay with it. So if you find yourself like obsessed with knowing exactly what people are working on, when they're working on it, and how they're doing it, that's going to be a sign that you're micromanaging. If you have difficulty delegating, all of us have, myself included, right? You bring people on, you have this like excitement about like, oh, I'm going to get rid of this thing. I don't have to do this thing anymore that, isn't my skill set, or, this person's going to be so much better at, or that I just don't enjoy doing, that's taking my time away from, bigger picture things or more of what I want to do or client work or whatever it is. So, and then people come on and then you're like, oh, well, actually, if I don't do that, will that make somebody mad? My big thing was always like writing, right? So I'm such a storyteller. I'm like really embodied in like my authenticity, and I built my entire social platform off that. It's me. When you DM me, I just really believe in like personal touch. And so delegating out any sort of writing has always been extremely difficult to me. Number one, because I have super high standards. Number two, because I struggled with like, if I don't write everything that flows through my business, which I would be completely 100% honest, like writing is one of the things, like anything that goes in an email, anything that my audience sees or my clients see, that is in written form, whether that's like social content, emails, web pages, I definitely have my eyes on, because it needs to be in alignment. And so that's why I said there's always going to be things that you have your hands in, right? And writing is one of the biggest needle movers for my business, because that's how I reach my people and tell my story and share my lessons, etc. So there has to be that personal touch there. But having help with that, having a strategic partner that can look at the data and say what's working and what's not, and offer ideas about how we can expand on things working, and create some writing or some ideas to write around that. That was hard for me because I wanted to do all of that. So difficulty delegating things out. And if you're saying like, okay, I have a team, I do delegate to them, I guarantee that if you did an audit of what you're doing day in and day out, like even if you did this over the course of a week, I bet you could find 5 or 10 things that you could delegate out. Some of these things are so small. I did this recently, and one of the things on there was like booking my own travel. And I'm like, well, I can still do that. Like, you have this whole conversation in your head of like, oh, I can still do that. Like, I have the time to do that. And then it's like, but I don't have to. And I have somebody who I've hired that is on their responsibilities, but yet I'm just doing it because I tell myself that it's easier, or it only takes a couple minutes, or only I know my schedule, like, and then we come up with all these excuses. So there's something like that, right, for you. And just because something only takes a couple minutes is 2 minutes a day over the course of a 5-day work week is still 10 minutes. That's 10 minutes that you could spend with your kids, 10 minutes that you could spend on a skincare routine, 10 minutes that you could spend meditating, 10 minutes that you could read a book, 10 minutes that you could go for a walk, and so I think we need to really like think about, instead of minimizing like, oh, it's only this amount of time, seeing the impact and the reality, and knowing the reality that time is our greatest asset. So more details of like being copied on every single email, trying to like overly control, and like you tell yourself that you're being helpful. I had one client, she's like, I'm just really like a boots on the ground kind of leader. I like to be on the field with my team. And I'm like, I hear you, and I respect that so much. And I absolutely think that there is times that we are the owners of our business. And with that, if somebody quits and something needs to be done, absolutely, we're going to get pulled into some stuff sometimes. But when you think about a coach and a team, the coach is not on the field. The coach is on the sidelines. The coach is preparing. The coach is planning. The coach is observing. And then they're making calls, right? And so it's important that we remember that just because we step off the field as leaders, just because we remove ourselves from being in the work as much, it's actually more beneficial to our team, because then we're putting ourselves in the right skill set. Because when you started as an entrepreneur, you started with an expertise. your expertise was not in administration and operations and all the stuff that you, and marketing, or even if it was, right? In one of these areas, you still have had to adapt to other roles that are not your expertise. And so putting yourself in the seat to fully utilize and be in your expertise and have innovation and creative ideas in your zone of genius is so beneficial to your team. So it's let people do what they're good at, right? So I understand wanting to be helpful. I understand wanting to feel like your team is collaborative and that you're all in this together, because that's how I operate. There's no hierarchy. I don't even like calling myself like, oh, I'm your boss. That still feels weird to me. But at the end of the day, I just want everybody on my team to feel like you have a seat at the table. And I do that by thinking, okay, my expertise is in coaching. My expertise is in being this thought partner for women. My expertise is in leading them. My expertise is in asking the hard questions and accountability. Like, these are my areas. My expertise is not in marketing. My expertise is not in sales even. These are skills that I've had to develop over time because I was all of these departments. But remembering that hiring a team should move you further and deeper into your expertise so that you can get better. Right? Freeing up time for me to develop myself and in ways that I didn't have time for before, to be a better leader and a better partner for my clients. And the last thing that I will say in like the micromanaging and just like the management aspect of your business is, you probably hold maybe a subconscious or unconscious belief that nobody can do it like you, that nobody is capable of doing it like you. And that I will always challenge when my clients bring it to me, because skill sets, tools, and knowledge can always be built and learned. Character is something that is harder to change or develop. And so this is also something to think about when you're hiring your team members. Are we looking at character, or are we simply looking at what their experience was? That's more of a side note, but one of my favorite things to say to people. So let me know if that's something, any of this has resonated with you, or if I've called you out. As you know, it's my job to call you out so I can call you up into your greatest potential. And so let's talk about why we actually get so stuck in the work. Biggest reason is guilt. Again, we feel guilty about delegating things out. We feel guilty that, oh, this is my business, so I should be working the hardest, I should be working the most. So there's a lot of guilt that comes with delegation. Other thing is assuming. Assumptions keep us stuck. We assume that when we delegate out, our team members are going to be like, oh, she's giving me something else to do. But aren't you paying that person? Are you giving them something, and are you delegating and communicating clearly and effectively and delegating in a way that's respectful and kind and within their scope? Or are you not delegating correctly? And so that's where we have to dig into, why do you have those assumptions? But most times when we give somebody a part of our business or a role in our business, or we allow them to take charge of something in our business, what happens is they feel empowered. They feel confident. They feel like, man, she trusts me with this. And how cool is it that she trusts me with this? And so it's actually the opposite. And the same thing with guilt, right? If your employees or your contractors, your team, you feel guilty because you're like, oh, they're always so busy. Well, why are we not having a conversation about that? And are you assuming that they're that busy, or are they coming to you and saying that they're overwhelmed? And are you having a conversation to alleviate that? Because that's the thing, is that you should be coaching and empowering your employees and your team members to be better people. They should be evolving in your business and growing in your business alongside you. Otherwise, they don't want to stay. Right? It is like one of my favorite things. One of my team members always is like, was telling me about how she loves how her husband will always say like, oh, that's something your boss would say, because she learns so much from like reading my blogs, listening to my podcast, like doing some writing, things like that. And I think that's so cool, because she feels like she's, she's doing her job, but also it's inspiring her, and she's growing and she's learning and she's able to implement things in her life too. And that's one of the things what I love, that actually 4 of my team members are moms, which is so cool. So while we get stuck in the work because we feel guilty or we assume things, the truth is we can't actually lead them as well if we spend no time on the bigger picture, if we spend no time in that observational role, in that visionary seat, right? And if we don't have space and time to do that, that's why the business feels messy, disorganized, dysfunctional, scattered, and it doesn't feel good for anybody involved, right? And the other truth is that, like I said, when you hand something off, you empower them. When you take something away, you disempower them. When somebody does something and you're offering, I absolutely believe in constructive criticism or constructive feedback, I say, in saying like, I love this part about it. I love this idea. This part isn't relevant. This part, needs to be changed. And so offering those ideas and offering those as teachable moments, we empower them. We're teaching them. But when we get something that we don't approve of, or somebody gives us a deliverable, or does a task and they don't do it in the way that we want, if we just take that and do it ourselves, number one, we are telling them like, okay, you didn't do a good job, so we're not highlighting the things that they did well. And number two, we're putting something back on our plate, which creates this cyclical relationship of like, okay, I'll just do this thing and then I hand it over and then they do it, which is very inefficient, right? So if you want to lead your business well, if you want to stop getting sucked back in, have all these interruptions, if you want to actually be able to be in the CEO seat and visionary seat, which is paramount and pivotal for the continued growth, if you don't have time to creatively and critically think and plan and observe and take thoughts and plan out how you're going to implement them, you stay in the same place. And if you want to do that, your business has to be operationally set up with what's going on behind the scenes to actually support you being in the CEO role. And what I will tell you is that if you haven't heard yet, I want to tell you about Mom Founders Inner Circle. This is my 12-month privately led business program, and it is for mom entrepreneurs who are established, who are seasoned, who are past the first year, of business. You have at least like 1 or 2 team members, if not more, in place, and you are definitely managing your business, and you need to, in order to get unstuck, in order to fulfill your big dreams and your big goals, while also not burying yourself in the business, you need to move into the CEO role. This is what the second phase of the program is actually doing for you. So in this 12 months together, we're starting by organizing your business and giving you instant relief. I am giving you the tools and the skills and the guidance and the accountability throughout this 12 months so that you can have relief from stress, relief from overwhelm, so you can stop spinning, so that you can actually spend more time with your family, so that you can have time to creatively think, so that you can actually turn off and take vacations, so that you can actually foster and develop the relationships that are most important to you. And in the second phase of this, we're talking all about your leadership, which is what we're talking about here today. We don't necessarily know how to lead when we start our businesses. Even if we were in a leadership role prior, we're still in a different position here. We're still leading something that we have born from our own expertise. And so learning how to move out of managing everything and micromanaging everything and being stuck in the day-to-day into truly leading something that can become your legacy and your impact. And these steps and these tools that I'm giving you inside this phase of the program are going to truly change the trajectory of your business because of not just the way that you feel, but also the way that your team feels. And then after that, then we get to move into the scaling phase, What most business coaches won't tell you is they're so heavily focused on your big dreams and your audacious goals and scaling that they won't tell you that in order to scale and continue scaling and continue growing, that you need to first learn how to organize and lead, which is why this is the mom founder method, which is why everything has been created in my 12 years of entrepreneurship and my 8 years of being a mom with being a mom in mind. Because I can tell you for a fact that I've been through business programs that I wasn't able to actually implement very much of it, very little of it, because it didn't apply to my life. I want to be a present mother. I don't want to work a million hours a week, and I want to be able to build generational wealth for my family. So if this is you, then you need to get inside this program. It is limited only to 10 women. We are spending a year together going through this program. And the greatest added benefit to this program is having a community of women so that you can go further. When you are surrounded by women who get it, by mothers who get it, and you have this community that becomes, a referral network for you, that becomes partners for you, that becomes a shoulder to cry on if needed. When you get to develop these real friendships with people, it is so incredible at what happens. And not only are we just doing this program virtually, we actually come together and you get to have a 3-night retreat without children that is dedicated to you, to your business, and to your leadership, and to foster these relationships in person. And my retreats alone are so transformational. And so this was a necessary component of this program, that I just wanted to do something that nobody else was doing. And so I want to encourage you, if you are a mom running a business and you have been in business for a year or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10, and you have a small team or a big team, and you really are capped for energy, you're capped for time, you have these big dreams, you have these big ideas, and you know that you need somebody that is going to cut out the fluff and give you the straightforward action plan that is going to hold you accountable to that, and that is going to truly help you grow and scale your business for the long term, then you need to get inside Mom Founders Inner Circle. I'm going to make sure that the link for that is in the show notes. And it was just too relevant for me to not talk about today as we're talking about moving from a manager to a CEO. So let's talk now about how to actually move into this CEO role. We understand now that being in the CEO role is so important for the continued growth of our business. So what does the CEO role look like? What does that actually entail? And some of these things may shock you because you're like, oh my gosh, it feels like I'm like doing so little. So the first thing that I want to say is the CEO role is so much more about who you are and how you operate and your mind and your standards than it is what you do on a day-to-day basis. So CEOs, the most successful CEOs, spend their time in 4 areas, right? And so I want you to think about these 4 areas and use them as like your buckets to filter what you're doing right now and see what falls outside these buckets. So first is building relationships, right? So building new relationships. Some people call this networking. Transactional networking makes me want to vomit. So I'm big on, I would rather go to coffee and sit with one person and have a high level conversation than go to a networking event where I'm exchanging business cards. That's just the way that I operate. And that's the kind of spaces that I facilitate too. It's based on depth and care and really getting to know people, but building relationships. They say your network is your net worth, right? It's so much about who you know, who can refer you to people, the friendships that you build, right? This really matters. The next thing is the client and customer relationships. I shared this in another podcast, but my father-in-law recently told me, he was a very successful business owner. They recently sold their business, and I was like, what are the things that you think make someone the most successful? Or what does a successful business like really need to thrive long term? And he was like, well, you need a good product and you need good customer service. And I'm like, yes, like that is it. And it was like honestly reassuring to me, because I'm like, I know what I've built. I know that it's good. I know that it's working. But hearing that from somebody who is in their 70s who built a multi-million-dollar business is like, it's like, okay, we overcomplicate this thing, right? So client and customer relationships, are you providing a good experience? Do you have built into your services and your offerings a reason to retain people and keep them coming back? Are you continuing to ask for feedback to get better? Do you have time and space to think about how you want to innovate and make it better? Right? So your business relationships, and then your client or your customer relationships. And then we have two more buckets. So third bucket is going to be team culture, right? You cannot simply hire people on and just give them tasks and expect them to stick around long term. People are meant to grow and evolve. And if they don't feel like they're growing with you, they're going to leave. So how are you fostering their personal or professional growth? Creating a culture that makes people want to work with you, creating a team where each person has a leadership responsibility, where each person has buy-in, where each person understands the mission. This is so important. And the fourth bucket is big vision. So this is what I keep mentioning with, creative thinking. And the hardest part for people is that they get stuck in the task part of this, and even in the planning part of this. Whereas we can't get creative ideas or innovative ideas without space, without time. Have you ever noticed that some of your greatest ideas will come to you? Mine always come in the shower, right? It's because nothing is distracting me. I'm not doing anything else. I'm just there enjoying my shower. And so I think that it's important for us to remember these four buckets and this big vision. This big vision work is what drives the long-term results for your business, because a lot of people just repeat the same things over and over again, and it may work to an extent, but we're not looking at how we can evolve and how we can do things better and what isn't being done in our industry, and paying attention to those sorts of things. So those are the four buckets that I want you to think about. And if you're like, okay, I'm going to move into the CEO role, these are my four buckets. So that way, every time that you do something or put something on your calendar, you can say, does it fall into one of these four buckets? Right? So thinking about these four buckets, and you're like, okay, well, I have a lot of stuff that doesn't fall into these four buckets. So first of all, you need to get inside Mom Founders Inner Circle. Absolutely, hands down. Second of all, okay, what are we doing with all this work that's on our plate? We need to start thinking about how we're delegating. We need to start thinking about, do we have the right people in the right roles to support these gaps? So when you think about these four buckets and you think about all the stuff that's falling outside of these four buckets, do you have somebody currently on your team that this falls into their scope? Do you not have somebody, right? Is there somebody on your team that's not in their current scope, but maybe they would be in love to move up and into that? So these are just some ideas for you to start sitting with. But I want you to think about, okay, what doesn't fall into these four buckets, and what do you keep getting pulled into? Is it you, or is there actually a gap here, right? And this is why we need support coming from all directions. We need support in our home. We need support in our business. We need support in our personal development. We need support in our professional development. And there is no level of too much support, truly. So I want you to think about, in order to move into this CEO role, I want you to think about these four buckets. I want you to get clear on what you're doing that falls outside these four buckets. And then after you've identified what doesn't fall into these four buckets, then you need to identify, do I have a team member in place that can take these things? And then what other gaps are you seeing where you're getting pulled into things? And can you create an additional process, procedure? Do you need to delegate better or communicate more clearly? You need to go back to you and what you can control for these interruptions and these things that you keep getting pulled into. So I hope that this helps give you clarity on being the CEO of your business and will better allow you to move in that direction, and just understand that this is a natural progression that happens over time. And once again, if you are a mom and you have been in business and you have big dreams and big goals and you want to truly create an impact in this generational wealth for your family, but you're capped on your time and you're capped on your energy, and you know that you can't keep sustaining the way that you're running your business right now, I really want you to click the link in the show notes and check out Mom Founders Inner Circle. Enrollment is open now. It's for a limited time. This is a 12-month program, so you have one shot this year, and we have half a year left we start this program actually in September, and so it's going to give you the rest of the summer with your kids. It's going to give you clarity on like what you really want to accomplish over the next year, and then we are kicking this thing off, and it was going to be truly life-changing for you, for your leadership, and for your family. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I hope that today you have committed to becoming the CEO of your business, and I will talk to you guys next week.